Welcome back to Off the Couch with the Psych Guys. My name is Dr. Lucan, always here with Timothy Meyer. Today, what I saw in the news talking about how people could feel super intense emotions and the stuff that they actually end up doing with them. Because to me, emotions are a bitch, right? They're very challenging. There's a lot of them. They're confusing, right? They have the body portion to it, the physiological experience, the thinking part, the overwhelming emotion that most people can't even name what it is. Forget about what to do with it. But just the experience itself of overwhelming, overstimulating emotion is a lot.
Yeah.
Right? And what do most people do when they don't like something? Or what most animals do when they don't like something? They try to get rid of it immediately.
Yeah.
Right. Notice when we're, let's say, in physical pain, first thing people want to do is take Tylenol. We don't like sit there and go, feel pain. What could that mean? First, I have a headache. Let me take a Tylenol. Right. It's automatic. We need to get rid of it. In emotion world, what do? We suppress it. Mm-hmm. Right. By definition, because when we suppress it, immediately we're feeling better. So we think to us, aha, that's the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's funny. Emotions are a bitch, right? And they're also great and all that sort of stuff. But really, 9 times out of 10, the conversation that we're having with, in one way, shape, or form is like, yeah, these emotions are a bitch, right?
Because they're overwhelming, and they're even positive emotion. Even you could have a positive experience, but if you don't know what it means, you don't know how to identify, that means you don't even know how to continue feeling the same way. Because if you don't know how you got the positive emotion, what it means, what the emotion is, and what to do to continue, then you're kind of like floating through this random space, experiencing overwhelming negative emotions and hopefully sometimes positive emotions, but there's no cohesion to it. There's no way to be, regulate them to the degree that you would want. So you're almost like at the receiving end of these powerful things that happen. And I really like the way you kind of think of it, though.
Yeah. So, I like to explain to people that in a lot of ways we're set up to fail.
Right. Oh, great. That's
like
good to hear.
I think we're totally set up to fail. So I explain it this way, right? Don't quote me on the years here, but, our brains haven't changed since, like caveman times, right? So I like to explain to people that through evolution, we developed in sort of this way. And, we basically stopped, we haven't really evolved at all. Someone out there is probably going to say, well, actually, but in a nutshell, our brains really haven't evolved since, roughly caveman times. Right. And so here we are living in, the 2020s with this brain that was designed for then. But boy, is our world different now. Right. And so I like to explain the brain in a kind of a simple, digestible way. I call it new brain and old brain. Right. So new brain, it kind of goes on top of old brain, right? So if you open up my skull and you see the whole wrinkly part, we call that our cortex. That's our new brain, and you can kind of almost peel it off, and it's almost flat, right? If you are,
it's like an outgrowth of an old brain.
It's like a layer. You can peel it off. It's like an outgrowth. It's on top, right? So I say new brain like this with an open palm, and then I say old brain like this with a closed fist, and new brain kind of wraps around old brain. So I describe it this way, right? Old brain really only cares about one thing, which is staying alive, right? So it's going to make, your body function the correct way, digest your food, keep your heart going, all that sort of stuff. And what I speak about the most is this is where anxiety lives, our amygdala and all that sort of stuff. So old brain, it's really, really fast. It only cares about staying alive. It doesn't have any sense of time.
Right.
It's nonverbal, and it reacts faster than new brain. Now, new brain, that's where we sort of do all the cool things that we do as human beings, right? We talk and communicate, imagine, remember, plan, all the cool stuff, right? So the interesting thing about it is old brain reacts about a half second before new brain does. Always.
Which makes sense because information flows on your hand there, flows from your elbow up.
Yep.
Through the spine, right? Just that I think that's important for people to kind of be aware of, that it goes, you would think that maybe if it's in the front, it kind of gets filtered through the front first. Actually, no, that's not how it works. It gets filtered through the old brain first.
Yep, exactly, right? So old brain reacts, and then new brain comes online, right? So there's about a half second delay there, which doesn't seem like a long time, but it is a really long time as far as brain stuff goes, right? So think about it. my dumb old brain that only cares about staying alive, has no idea, is nonverbal, doesn't, blah, 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 reacts first.
Right.
It's where anxiety lives.
Right.
And it only cares about staying alive.
Right.
It's strong, it's powerful, it's fast, it's connected. It's like a hyper, information highway to our whole nervous system. Mm-hmm. So when, I don't know, I'm watching the news and I see something triggering, what's going to react first?
Right.
My old brain, right? So automatically, boom, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling whatever, right? Before I even really get a chance to think about it.
Right.
And so if you think about, kind of like what I was saying before about how our brains really haven't evolved much since caveman times, it makes sense that our brains would work this way, right? Because if you think about what cavemen had to worry about, well, they had to worry about getting like food and shelter and, a mate and all that sort of stuff. But most importantly, they had to stay alive.
Right.
There's bears and saber-toothed tigers and all of that sort of stuff. So when a bear shows up in the middle of the woods and it hits, old brain and it springs us into action, and we either like stab the thing with our stick, or we run away, or we play dead, fight, flight, or freeze. It's great. Right. But, we do still need those responses today because they keep us from getting hit by cars and falling off of buildings and that sort of stuff. But I would say like 90% of the things that make us anxious, we don't need that response for it, right? Like our boss saying, oh, hey, I need to speak with you after work, right? We don't need to react the same way as if we were face to face with a bear, but our old brain doesn't know that.
Right.
It sees it as a threat and it acts accordingly, right? So emotions are a bitch. Yeah, they really are, especially now. Right. And really explain to people that we are set up to fail. I think it's important.
Right. No, I really like the way you kind of explained it, because to me, to kind of piggyback on that idea a little bit, it's the old brain is all about you not needing to be a part of it, right? Is if I'm saying to myself, oh, how do I identify? I identify with some of the decisions that I make. I don't really identify with how my digestion works, right? So there's so many processes in our bodies that are just done for us from this old brain, right? We don't really have to be involved. Like we don't really regulate how we digest. We don't really regulate our temperature of the body. We don't regulate a lot of the things that are happening. However, to me, emotions are kind of on that crossroad where on the one hand, if something falls and it's heavy, it makes a huge sound, we're going to get startled, right? And we're like, oh my God, what was that? What happened, right? So we always going to have that response. However, to me, the amygdala is kind of interesting that way because it's going to respond. On the other hand, it also responds to the newer brain where we can regulate it sort of looking backwards, if you will. If you're thinking this is new and this is old, we're going to be thinking like once the information gets to the prefrontal cortex here, we're able to kind of look back and say, and almost examine.
Yeah.
What just happened? Is it really survival mode? What can we do here? Like perfect example is, let's say if somebody has a dog phobia, right? Perfect example, right?
Yep.
Of course, it's an animal, unpredictable animal. So of course, if you're afraid of it, what's going to happen? Your old brain's going to respond. Okay, oh my God, you got to run, right? And that's how it kind of continues. However, now we have access to the new brain and says, hold on a second, before I cross the street, before I run away, let me take a deep breath. Let me kind of think this through. Hold on a second. What is at my perception of what's happening? Can I push myself through the anxiety? In one of the podcasts, we talked about how the world can get smaller or bigger. This is exactly what it is, right? The old brain keeps you alive. It doesn't really care about expanding your world, limiting your world. It just, you're in that cave. Your job is to survive, to protect, to eat, to sleep, and that's it. Right?
Yeah.
In today's world, we thankfully have the option of being able to explore, push boundaries, being creative, plan things, build things, right? In a way that never been imaginable before. So to me, this idea of regulating how you feel is such an important part of treatment. Yeah. There's so many therapies out there that are specifically designed. Let's acknowledge that you feel this way. Let's name it. Let's figure out how to regulate it even before doing anything.
Yep.
Right? That's why I started off by saying when people have intense emotions, overwhelming emotions, people do crazy shit.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because it's not regulated. It's just like, that's why it's called acting out. You literally act out how you feel.
Yep.
Right? It's so common in kids, right? They're just acting out. There's very little regulatory strategy, right? Parenting typically is to help kids regulate how they feel so they can make more effective decisions, right? For adults, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So, some urges, some needs, some wants, some emotions are so big. Our first job is to catch them, understand them, regulate them so that you have the information of what you want to be able to do with it. And to me, that is, when somebody's really successful in being walking out of therapy for the last time, to me, is when they're able to do that. When an individual is able to name, regulate, and then come up with an effective plan going forward, that is an empowered individual.
Oh, completely. And so it's tough because we're set up to fail.
Right.
But it is workable, right?
Sure.
Kind of knowing that our old brain's going to react before our new brain, right? And so our ability to, and I'm really just repeating what you said, but, be able to recognize that emotion, understand it, not react quite yet, take a breath or two, get that new brain online to be able to examine it and notice it, be mindful of it. Really, that's what we're talking about, mindfulness here. Be mindful of it and then choose our course of action, even though, everything about our strong, powerful old brain is going to be pushing us in a different direction.
For sure.
When new brain comes online, we do have a choice.
And I really like that. And my significant dislike for victimhood mentality, but here, to me, you really want to be able to acknowledge, limited victimhood, because in a way, if we're going to zoom out and say, like, how do we identify ourselves with the way of, like, perceiving how we think and feel, some people call it consciousness, whatever the word we want to use, right? We want to also acknowledge, wow, old brain is so powerful. Information gets filtered through it, and I'm already getting that information by the time it got filtered through, right? So to me, it's such a, it's not about, oh my God, I have no control over my life, but you want to acknowledge the fact that there's a piece that is being experienced for you, and by the time you catch that experience, now it's up to you to regulate it. I think it's such an important part, because some people go the opposite. They, like, own every feeling, own everything that they have. Like, I thought it out, it has to be this. In reality, not really. Because to me, a lot of it is like you're owning digestion. Well, I guess you can take an antacid, of course, or you could eat less pizza. So there's a lot of things you could do, but technically, like, digestion happens for you.
Yeah.
Or I would even say it happens to you, right? This is the same thing. Like, let's not jump too much. Some people are complete victims, right? Like, where everything happens for them, everything happens for them, right? And other people are the opposite. I have to own everything. I have to understand everything. This emotion has to be with it. That's also not true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of genetics involved. There's a lot of temperament involved. There's a lot of old brain information that's involved. So let's create this nice balance between understand lots of things are happening for you. Your responsibility is to catch yourself, to understand what you're feeling, being mindful of it so that you can regulate it and move forward. So to me, I know it's a little bit of a cognitive cerebral idea because you want to zoom out, but if you can get that, in that balance, as everyone talks about, you're not too much of a victim, but you are also not responsible completely for the feelings that you have, gives you that really nice freedom to be able to acknowledge that some things happen and create a plan.
Yeah. Going kind of like a step
Right.
aside from that, there's another thing that I just kind of want to throw out here. I like to explain that, old brain's kind of dumb. It's like our dumb guard dog, right? That, like, freaks out whenever there's anything going wrong. And every time that it does something that protects us or keeps us alive, it gives itself a pat on the back and says, keep doing that, right? So, when, let's say I'm afraid of dogs, because we just use that analogy a lot, and old brain says, get away from that.
Right.
And, don't, avoid the dog, blah, blah, blah. And I survive, old brain is giving itself a pat on the back saying, all right, great, let's keep that up. Right? Because it doesn't care about anything else other than staying alive, right? But new brain might be feeling, depressed because I haven't seen my buddy John in 3 years because he got that puppy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's an excellent point. And that's where the tension comes in, right? It's almost, if you can acknowledge that there's one, you have this protective dog that only wants to keep you alive. And then there's another part, this evolved part, if you want to say, that's now more interested in, like, you want to get that job. You want to be in a romantic, a long-lasting relationship. You want to be creative. You want to go see a friend. You want to maintain social connections. All of a sudden, that dumb guard dog is maybe protecting you from things that you don't really need protection from.
Yep.
And that's, I think, the challenge of today's sort of humanity is, like, figuring that out.
Oh yeah.
because sometimes we had a hard time doing it, and we still have a hard time doing it. Hopefully, with time, we get better at that.
Yeah. And so, I do go through this a lot with people, like, especially like in the beginning of therapy, just to really point out, like, yeah, emotions are really tough.
Right.
And like, and they come from down here, and it's almost kind of like out of our control. We have this part of our brain that does all this. It's so fast. And then we try to manage them, but it's really challenging. So like, yeah, like it is really hard. Like, here's why.
Right.
And a lot of times people kind of walk away like, huh, like, okay. And then as they're kind of using that understanding of like what's happening even in their brain, it gives us that like that chance, that opportunity, like we said before, to like take that step back, regulate, acknowledge, be mindful, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. No, I think it's with consistent practice, you're able to tame that dumb guard dog.
Yeah.
And then you're more empowered to do what you actually want to do, rather than being just informed by survival alone.
Yeah. And that's basically it.
All right. So that there you have it, guys. If you could think of how to regulate your guard dog so that it actually empowers you, keeps you safe, and also empowers you to do what you want to do, then you've mastered life. And then you should call us and tell us how you did it.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.